What is up and welcome back to Working Hard. If you are listening to this episode, it means two things. Number one, I am married. That's very fun. But if you listened to last week's episode, you will know that already. And number two, I am now officially on my honeymoon, which means I will be horizontal and hopefully slightly tipsy and hopefully it's sunny. So I've recorded this episode because I figured before the wedding, it made sense to go through the archives and pick out the best advice we've had from the amazing relationship experts that I've had on over the years, from sexologists to relationship coaches to girls who have just been through some shit and shared it on the podcast. We're going into it all to hopefully create a guide for when you're feeling a little lost when it comes to love, or you're just in need of some good old advice. Before we get into the episode, it would mean a huge amount if you could subscribe to this channel. We grew more than we ever have in the last month, and it is the one very easy thing you can do to support this free resource I absolutely love making for you every Monday. It would mean so much. Thank you, and I hope you love the episode. This episode is sponsored by Adobe Express, the quick and easy create anything app where you can make stunning social posts, images, videos, flyers, and so much more. With Adobe Express, collaborating on a project in real time has never been easier. You can work with your team on the go with quick editing and commenting capabilities. No more circling back, following up, or bumping this. You can also keep your team on brand using shareable templates with lockable elements. Lock an object's position, styling, and more to keep content polished and prevent unintended changes. I know how stressful it is when your asset goes out for approval and before you know it, everything's changed. Adobe Express is available on desktop, or you can download the mobile app and start creating today for free. Okay, so we're starting with my episode from way back in the archives with the brilliant dating expert Anna Williamson. You'll know her from Celebs Go Dating, and I'm sorry if the audio isn't great, but I promise the advice is worth it. Anyway, the first clip I wanted to include from Anna was her take on the biggest mistake we're usually making with matchmaking. What would you say the biggest kind of common mistake people make when trying to find a kind of match / dating?
Okay, so my number one pet hate and common mistake is my type is. Hates it. And woe betide anyone on our next series of Celebs Go Dating that trots that out. The very moment you say my type is, you are limiting everything outside of that type. And usually that type has come from previous experience. Mm-hmm. But guess what? If it's previous experience, you're not in that relationship anymore. So what? Are you wanting to go back to your past and recreate your past? That's often where we need to do some work on going, but if you want what you've had but you haven't got anymore, where are you heading? Mm-hmm. So for me, the most common mistake and the biggest mistake and my bugbear is people that are very narrow-minded when it comes to their type, but limiting yourself with just saying, I only want someone that is tall, dark, handsome, blue eyes, does this for a job, has a great family. You are completely limiting your possibilities.
And so how do we draw the line between attraction and what we're naturally attracted to and making sure that we're not kind of putting ourselves in this narrow-minded type box?
Mm-hmm. So what I'm talking about a lot really is aesthetics. People come up with what they like the look of. Mm-hmm. Okay. But we all know that relationships are so much more than that. Yeah. I mean, my God, if my husband married me just based on my looks, when he sees me massively hungover and sleep deprived, I am not looking my best. It's looking at the bigger picture. And really a relationship and matchmaking is a huge part of it is based on values. Okay, what is important to me? What do I stand for? If you were to strip me down, like with supervision, laser eyes, what is important to me? What do I, on my deathbed, if someone said, what has been the most important part of your life? What have you cared about the most? That is where we elicit our top values. Mine is family, it's communication, it's honesty, it's creativity. These are really important things to me. And that is how we can look beyond I like someone that's got black hair or someone that's blonde. That's fine. But there's so much more to that because all of that can be changed and probably will change. Attraction wanes after we get through that 6 month, 1 year, if you're lucky, honeymoon phase. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to find that depth. And that is where your values come in. And if you match your values with someone else, that is where you should be absolutely beelining for, because that will create the foundation of your relationship.
I also absolutely loved her take on love languages. I personally love talking about love languages in a relationship with friends. I feel like it's so important understanding your love language and your partner's love language, no matter what type of relationship you have. I think it makes such a big difference to feeling seen and loved. Even if you have different love languages, being able to translate that for each other, I think is so important. Question number 1.
Go on.
Is the love language stuff bullshit?
No, I'm a huge fan of love languages. I think it is the key to a successful relationship. I really do. I think if you can fathom out what your love language is and what your partner's love language is, you have basically hit the jackpot. The communication
it's a cheat
jackpot.
code.
It's a massive cheat code.
It's helpful for, because I think obviously the thing is likelihood is, even if you're going to differ in some ways, probably, different relationships are obviously different, but what happens if you have love languages that are completely different?
I mean, that's fine. It's just learning how to tune into those. And our love languages can move around the hierarchy. A love language is, by its definition, is how do you receive love and how do you give love? For me, my number one love language is acts of service. Honestly, all my husband has to do is load the dishwasher without asking, and he's on. He's on for it. My husband, it's quality time. For him, he really appreciates that quality time when I put the phone down. And I'm actively into him. And the minute you tap into your partner's love language, good things happen.
That one is also such a great episode to listen back to if you want some hardcore relationship advice. Anna is so great. Next up, we've got a clip from my second episode with Roxy Nafusi. I asked her pretty outrightly whether you could manifest love, quite simply because I was skeptical about the concept. It's safe to say, though, she had a pretty clear and very actionable response, which I absolutely loved. Do you think you can manifest love?
Yes. Absolutely. I think it's the hardest thing for most people to manifest because we hold the most wounds around love and relationships. But yes, you absolutely can.
So how do you do it?
Step 1, be clear in your vision, know exactly what the kind of person that you want, what you want that relationship to feel like, and who you want to be in that relationship. Step 2 is believe you are worthy of it. So remove fear and doubt. So that's about healing and processing your past and working with therapists, changing your language, using affirmations, meditation, whatever it is to help you heal those wounds. Step 3 is align your behavior. So go on dating apps, allow your friends to set you up. You are not going to meet someone sitting at home. I say that to myself, not that I'm single, but if I was. Step 4, overcome tests from the universe. This is about not settling. If you are engaging with people that don't treat you right, that don't give you respect, that aren't going to give you what you want, you are taking up energetic space and blocking somebody who is right for you from entering your life. So say no to them, let them go, close the door. Step 5 is embrace gratitude. Don't be thinking I'll be happy when I meet someone. Be grateful for your life now, for being, in a position of, empowerment and independence, and enjoy that while still knowing what you want. I call it the manifesting sweet spot, knowing what you want whilst being entirely grateful for all that you already have. Step 6, turn envy into inspiration. So make sure that when you're looking at other couples online, instead of being like, I can't believe they're with someone and I'm not, think, oh my God, what an amazing showcase of love. I can't wait to experience that for myself. And then step 7, trust in the universe. Do not allow yourself to become desperate. Desperation is a low vibe energy that will block you from receiving. Instead, sink into this trust and surrender that what you want is coming your way. That is my 7 steps to manifesting.
That clip has millions of views on TikTok, and I can very much see why. I feel like Roxy is so good at presenting clear strategies for getting what you want without suggesting that you can just click your fingers and get your dream partner. It makes it so clear how much of your relationship comes down to inner work. Next up is for all my girlies who are in their dating era. Let me tell you from experience, dating is the biggest test for your boundaries and your self-worth. My episode with Michelle Ellman was all about how to set boundaries and the best ways to date, and I loved this part where she gave advice on how to boost your self-worth when you're actually trying to put yourself out there.
Boundaries are one of those things that people think, especially in dating, oh, we're not serious enough for me to set my boundaries. Boundaries are there with everyone, and you should be setting it from the get-go. So the first date, they plan a date that's 5 minutes around from their house and 2 hours away from you. Hey, no, unfortunately, that's not going to work for me. Let's find somewhere in the middle. If they text you 2 o'clock in the morning, from the get-go, hey, this is not an appropriate time to text. I'll reply to you when I finish work tomorrow. you actually setting those boundaries of what's convenient for you, what works for you, because why are you putting them as a priority in your schedule when, again, they're still a stranger and they haven't earned that right?
So how would you recommend someone sets boundaries when they're dating?
So it is saying those small things, starting with where they choose the restaurant, how they reply. I remember with my boyfriend, the second day we were texting, he texted me at like 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm too busy during the workday to text. And so I replied to him at 6 o'clock and I was like, hey, I don't text during the workday, but feel free to text me and I'll reply as soon as I'm off work. And so I set that boundary. Now, over time, he earned his trust, he earned my respect, and he also earned just more interest, I guess. And I did reply to him during working hours, but that took a few months. And if he turned up late, or if I found he was disrespecting my time, I would communicate that. I think it's that difference between when you feel something, you thinking, oh, if I stay quiet about this, I will be more dateable and they'll like me more, and actually realizing if you show them that in the beginning, then you'll know sooner rather than later whether they are the right person for you.
Michelle's episode is a real goldmine if you want a dating pep talk, so I highly recommend it. I also loved what she had to say on why people settle in relationships. Do you think too many people are settling when it comes to dating in relationships?
I think there are a lot of people who don't have their self-worth in place, and the reason why people settle is because they don't know there is a person out there who exists who will actually treat them the way they deserve. And what usually is the reason why they stay in that relationship is because there's so much fear-mongering around being single. As I said, I was single for 8 years, and can you imagine the comments I got during those 8 years? Like, oh, you're just too picky, or you're looking too hard, so you can never win. You're either looking too hard or not looking hard enough.
Right, sure.
And I think actually being okay with being single is a really pivotal part of knowing you aren't settling in a relationship, because otherwise you will settle for the first person who walks in the door because you don't like your own company. And if the worst thing in the world is I ended up forever alone, then I end up forever with me and I like me. So that's okay. Whereas if you think, oh, I'm going to be left with myself, and I don't even like being alone, and I have 50 best friends because I never want to even sit in my apartment by myself, then of course you're going to run to anyone as company. But for you to actually have standards and criteria, and for you to look at, do you like them, not just do they like you? You have to know what you deserve. And that ultimately comes down to knowing the difference between being lonely and alone. And being in a relationship will not fix your loneliness. There are people in a relationship who are lonely because they are not being understood by their partner, who walk through the world as if they're a single anyway, but just have their partner in their life because they feel they need that to match what society tells them they should be, especially around age. If you're a certain age and single, or if you're a certain, if you're single for a certain length of time, they've been told you're too single, you've been alone for too long, all of those things. And actually, if you're happy in your life, that's all that should matter.
We're moving on now to my episode with sex therapist Kate Moyle. Her points were so interesting on why sex-related tension in a relationship can be so shameful and what to actually do about it. I never heard about the 2 types of desire until this conversation.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of frustration. I would try and just get to the bottom of what's going on. So what often happens is, for one partner, sex might be, and physical intimacy might be, like a real indicator of love in a relationship. That's how they feel valued. That's how they feel desired. For them, it is a really important kind of core part. For other people, it's less of a priority. And then if you understand that from each other, you can understand that, okay, so why maybe I'm the one that needs to kind of just think about that a bit more. Or the other partner can say, do you know what? I understand that you might see this differently to me. So how can we make a bit more space and time to work on this? And this is how we understand that desire works. Desire isn't always spontaneous. It feels turned on and excited out of nowhere, like a kind of bolt of lightning, and then we have sex. For a lot of people, it's responsive, which means that it emerges in response to starting something physical or some kind of sexual stimulation. So that can explain why lots of people say, I wasn't really feeling in the mood for sex. I was thinking, actually, I'd rather just go to sleep. But then we were kissing and we were touching, and I started to feel excited. And then we started moving into sex.
So some people are more likely to be generally turned on or have a high kind of libido throughout their, day, week or whatever. And some people will only have that libido activated if it's activated by something like touch or some sort of stimulation.
Yeah, and we see that people can have both types of desire.
Right.
But we see that particularly in long-term relationships, because we're used to each other.
Of course,
it's not
yeah.
that we're not as explorative, we're not kind of getting to know each other in the same way, and that we often see that responsive desire becomes a more dominant way of experiencing desire. But then we can really take control of our sex lives when we know that. But most of us think that when we have, so we think that spontaneous desire is the only type of desire. So then as soon as we stop having that, I've lost all desire. I've got no desire anymore. Actually, responsive desire tends to be alive and well. It's just not the version that we've been taught and that we've seen.
And do you think then that a couple can have like a healthier sex life by maybe signposting, maybe a night a week they have sex, or like a occasion that they have sex, or like something that, that kind of like sleep hygiene thing that's like your body knows if you're about to go to sleep, if you like turn on this music and turn down the lights, or like whatever it might be. Would you advocate for that when it comes to sex?
I think absolutely making the space for kind of physical and intimate time. As psychosexual therapists, we don't prescribe that people kind of schedule sex, because it can create pressure. And then, especially bear in mind, a lot of the time we're working with people who are struggling with sex.
Yeah, of course.
So kind of saying, right, on Tuesday night you're going to go home and have sex, just fills them with anxiety and fear, and that's not helpful. But creating a dedicated space where I often say to couples, put your phones away, screen-free evening or screen-free time, just to focus on each other, whether it's talking, eye contact, touching, all the things that are basic parts of human communication that start to release the kind of neurochemicals that make us feel close to each other, that start to make you feel like you've got someone's undivided attention, all the things that play a big part in sex, and then using that to kiss, touch, talk, be together, just be close. That is a platform from which we can start to see responsive desire emerging.
That's so interesting. We're going back over 2 years now to my episode with the amazing writer and broadcaster Elizabeth Day. Elizabeth went through a divorce in her late 20s and was so candid in this episode about how to know when a relationship just isn't working and the strategies that got her out the other side.
But I do think the older I've got as well, the more I realise that even when a relationship is over or a friendship is in a different phase, I can still think of that with love.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree with you. For me, a relationship is not a failure just because it ends. It is part of shaping our personal landscape in the same way that a volcano can shape a landscape and then remain dormant for many, many years.
Yeah.
I can still think of those relationships with love. So when I say that I shut the door, it's almost like that enables me then to think of them with love. Because to enable something toxic to keep on going and to keep pleasing whatever energy that is, you're going to find it very difficult to think fondly of them.
Yeah.
Letting it go actually is more loving sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what I've realized relatively recently. Also, I still see my divorce as a failure, but I no longer see failure as a negative.
Right.
So
Okay, interesting.
Yes. So obviously there are negative things that come about as a result of failure, but I'm incredibly grateful for it now. But there's no getting away from the fact that that marriage ended and failed, and when we were walking down the aisle, neither of us thought that that would be the case.
Yeah.
And not only that, it felt so shameful. And I don't know whether anyone listening to this who has been through a divorce or a public breakup can sort of relate to this, where I felt so ashamed that all of my loved ones had come to that wedding and had bought us gifts and had made an effort to interrupt their lives to celebrate that union, and it hadn't worked out, and not for want of trying on my part. And to face up to that took me a really long time. It took me, I think, a year within the marriage itself. It was a very slow motion thing, and there were lots of conversations and lots of therapy again on my part. And actually it was a very difficult thing to go through. And I look back now and I realize I was depressed.
Right.
And my best friend, Emma, who is also a psychotherapist, which is an amazing combination.
Very helpful. I'm looking for one of those if anyone wants to be my friend.
You can't have her as a best friend, but you could have her as your therapist. She's incredible.
Perfect.
And she describes it as the perspex screen time, where she would sit down opposite me and feel like she couldn't get to me, that she was knocking on a perspex screen. There was this sort of avatar of me, but I wasn't in touch. I was numb. I wasn't in touch with my own feelings. And I now realize that that's a symptom of, it was mild depression for me, but and luckily sort of therapy and Emma and my friends and family got me through that. So there was no doubting that it felt like a failure. And after that divorce, I thought, okay, so I failed at this. What does that mean? And I looked at it and I realized that what it meant was I didn't know what was going to happen next, because life had not gone according to my plan. And that can be very scary, but it can also be liberating, because you think, well, what do I actually want to fill?
You've suddenly given a blank slate.
Exactly.
Which I think it's really interesting. And I think what feeds into this a lot, I think a lot about the, obviously the timeline put on women in terms of like settling down, getting married if you choose to, having children, like the traditional, not just societal pressures, but like kind of everything, you know, just like all different sides of the pressures that come into that. And looking at like the statistics of like how most, actually like the majority of breakups happen around like late 20s, where people are thinking, actually, no, this is not going to be the person I'm going to be with. And also the amount of people who stick with something because they think, well, if I'm going to do it, like, I guess it's going to be now. And I can imagine there are so many people, even listening to this, who probably have that kind of mindset of thinking that because there's this kind of pressure, it has to be, you know, it has to be delivered within that time. And so what if it's the wrong person? Or so what if there's that kind of like feeling? Also probably who are, you know, as you say, already married and already kind of in that situation. And you almost think it's that like sunk cost fallacy where you think, well, I've invested time into this. All my friends and family have come to a day. We've said we're completely in love. We've bought, you know, like we've made a life together. I guess we're in this now. I can imagine it took you a long time to even recognize that actually that didn't have to be it. And you could move on from that. But I can imagine that being terrifying.
It was terrifying. I was lucky and unlucky in a way. So part of what contributed to the breakdown of that relationship was fertility treatment and a difficult and challenging fertility journey, which during the course of 1 year, I did 2 rounds of IVF back to back, both unsuccessful. Then I became pregnant naturally and I had a miscarriage at 3 months. And that was a lot to go through in a single year. And we can talk more about that, because that's a huge part of why particularly women who want to have biological children, why they feel there is a timeline. But what it did mean was that I didn't have children to consider. So if you are in a relationship and you do have children, I'm not even going to pretend that my experience is anything compared to yours, because that's so difficult. And actually, my now husband, he is divorced and has 3 kids. And I see how brilliantly he and his ex co-parent, but how difficult that is and how challenging it is and how you feel that you've let your children down at every single juncture. And so there's a lot more to consider if there are other people involved. And I absolutely a huge believer in working as much as possible in a committed relationship to try and sustain it. But if you've done all of that and it's still not working, then I promise you, you are not a failure. You have worked and tried your hardest, and the relationship might fail, but you're not a failure. You're actually really, really strong for being able to acknowledge that. And there is always life on the other side of it. And I think the thing about plans, for me, failure, my definition of failure is when something doesn't go according to plan. You have to then question the plan. Where did you get it from? Who told you that you had to be a certain way? Because quite often, the people you're getting that advice from are not people that you should be taking advice from. It could be an inner critic. It could be a strict teacher. It could be an unloving parent. It could be society itself with all of its patriarchal nonsense. It could be that you've watched too many 1980s rom-coms, as I did, and that you have a very heteronormative, conventional sense of what you think you should be like in your 20s and 30s. And I'm here to say that none of that needs to inform how you feel about yourself. That actually it's so much more valid and so much more crucial to take the time to know who you are and what you want for yourself right now, rather than projecting 5-10 years in the future.
I love what she said about questioning where you got your plan from. I feel like so many of us have this idea of what our lives and relationships are going to look like that's formed from movies or social media or our own inner critic. And it's so important to remember that that is very rarely the case. And finally, we have a clip from my first episode with the amazing Sarah Ashcroft, who had just gone through a massive breakup at the time. This was our mutual pep talk on why being high maintenance isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's quite a misogynistic phrase that women get targeted with, which is definitely just designed so that women ask for less during their relationships. And I'm not for that. One thing you've spoken about, which I absolutely love, is the idea that we should all be high maintenance.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a big, like, this is a big thing for me because I think I just love being someone who can pay their way. Right. I don't really want to ever feel like I'm relying on people. I've always been like that. But I think in this day and age, like, liking nice things and like wanting to go for like lovely dinners and liking 5-star holidays and like that can be seen as like high maintenance, right? But there's nothing wrong with it if you're paying for it yourself, you know? So I think the high maintenance back in the day was probably like slightly difficult to deal with. I don't view it like that. I just see high maintenance as just literally maintaining yourself, you know, being a self-maintained girly is what I just think is great.
Yeah, and I also feel like the words high maintenance are often used to devalue someone.
Yeah.
Like, as in, it's very much like, don't be high maintenance or you're too high maintenance. High maintenance is never, ever seen as a good thing.
No.
And that's such a, like, to me, that feels like an encouragement to settle for less.
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying that like everyone needs to want those things at all. Your high maintenance can just be being loved in the way that you need to be loved. It can be having communication and responsiveness in the way that you need. It can mean building the type of life together that you want to build.
Yeah.
Like, anything worth having is probably going to be high maintenance to a certain extent. Like, relationships are high maintenance. So if anyone at any point is saying you're too high maintenance, essentially what they're saying, like, I love the saying, like, you're only as needy as your unmet needs.
Yeah.
Like, that is categorically correct.
Yeah.
Because you are only like needy, high maintenance, all of these things are used to essentially explain a deficit that someone else has created that is just a mismatch in like how you should be.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so funny that something like high maintenance is used as a criticism, especially in like your case when you are quite clearly maintaining those standards and you also would be able to outside of a relationship.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Maybe to me, high maintenance is just having high standards,
right?
You know, and wanting things to be a certain way. And like, as I say, I think if you want to call someone high maintenance, but they're maintaining it themselves, that's just not.
Okay, that is it. I hope that at least one piece of advice from these incredible guests really hit you. I've left all the links to the full episodes in the show notes if you want to go back into the archives and have a listen. Thank you so much again for watching and listening. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button or leave us a lovely review. It means the absolute world and makes such a difference to us.